Because often in ADHD, the individual may not make the connection that it's their effort that's creating the results. You just think, I just got lucky.
Hey there, welcome to our podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, could you please do us a solid? If you're enjoying what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button on your platform. It really helps us reach more parents, coaches, and youth in the youth athlete development scene. All right, let's get into this week's chat.
Welcome back to the In Athlete Podcast. I've got a special guest here today who happens to be the mother of 2 of our members, actually. And I guess her kids have been with us for quite a long time, is Dolly. So I'm not going to butcher your surname. How do I pronounce your surname, Dolly?
It's okay. Dolly is perfect. If you want to say Dolly B, perfect.
Dolly, we'll go with Dolly B. There we go. We've got Dolly B on the podcast here today. She is an expert working with children, teens, and adults working with emotional and behavioural difficulties. She is also an NDIS registered specialist behaviour support practitioner and speech pathologist, and runs her own business, Behaviour Help, which is all about providing positive behaviour support resources for parents, teachers, and practitioners. And I thought she'd be an excellent person to bring onto the podcast today to, talk about the importance of a structured exercise for overall development of kids and teens with ADHD. Dolly, if you just want to quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll get straight into it.
Oh, Trent, you've done such an amazing job. So both of my kids who are teenagers, Ethan, who is 12 years old, and Avina, who's 14 years old, they've been coming to your amazing gym for such a long time, and it's made a world of difference. So thank you for you and your team for everything you do. And as you've said, I also work as an NDIS registered behavior support practitioner and speech pathologist. So I work with people who have got a diagnosis of ADHD and then often have got other conditions as well.
Yep. And then just kind of talk about a bit about your professional journey, then kind of talk about some unique key experiences of kids with ADHD.
Yeah, so basically, I get to work with children, adolescents, and adults who've got ADHD and, maybe other comorbid conditions like autism spectrum disorder, oppositional defiance disorder, anxiety, aggression, intellectual disability, and so on. And I support a lot of the individuals in schools, family homes, and also do a bit of work in the prison system. So as I support people who have, as one of their diagnoses, ADHD, I've really seen the importance of exercise. So whether that's at school, whether it's at home, or even in prison, how it really affects the person's emotional regulation. What emotional regulation is: your ability to identify, express, but most importantly, manage your emotions. And that is often a key impairment in individuals with ADHD. So exercise plays a critical role in that. It's not you have to use a holistic approach, but that is a very key component of it.
Yeah. And then in terms of ADHD, what is it in a bit more detail, but also what areas of the brain does it actually affect specifically? Then how does that have a downstream effect in terms of behavioral changes and difficulties they might have in the real world?
Yeah. So ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. So what the word neurodevelopmental means, it's 2 parts. So one is neuro. So what neuro is saying is, because of the differences in the brain chemistry and how the brain functions, that is what is causing the ADHD. So ADHD is not a psychological disorder. It's not a behavioral disorder, which means that the person just wants to be difficult, or it's not, a mood disorder. It's actually a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it's actually caused by differences in the brain chemistry and how the brain is functioning. And what developmental is saying is, for a lot of people with ADHD, this is a lifelong disorder. So it's a lifelong condition. So the supports and services that the person needs is on a long-term basis. And it's not about curing it or fixing it. It's more about finding out, what strategies do you need to be able to manage the symptoms and to be able to still achieve your full potential. So in terms of the area of the brain it really affects, it's the frontal lobe, so the front part of the brain. And what the front part of your brain, it's the CEO of your brain. It is basically, it does what's called executive functioning. So what executive functioning is, it's this big term and it's made up of a number of sub-skills, but things like planning, organizing, sequencing. So just to understand it. So let's say, an individual with ADHD needs to turn up to your gym. So what planning, organizing, sequencing is saying is, firstly, you've got to think to yourself, now, what time do I want to go to Inner Athlete? I want to get there at 6 p.m. Okay, well, have I booked it, on the phone? And then, so that's the planning, the organizing. What the sequencing is saying is, as the day is going on and you've got to get to Inner Athlete at 6 o'clock, how are you organizing your day? How are you sequencing your day so that you can manage your time and you turn up at 6 o'clock? Now, if you have difficulties with planning, organizing, sequencing, and a lot of other skills, then turning up on time is tricky. And then that has got its own implications, because then you feel disappointed, annoyed at yourself. Why haven't I turned up, sorry, why haven't I, I've let people down, and then am I going to turn up the next day, and so on. So so executive functioning is the key area that is often impaired in ADHD.
Cool.
Yes.
Oh, thanks for that. Then I guess the role of exercise, and then the benefits of exercise with individuals with ADHD. I guess, what are some of the key elements that actually helps them with that auto regulation?
Yep. So basically, any condition, whether it's ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, whatever the condition is, even anxiety, whatever it is, it's on a spectrum, it's on a continuum, which means each person with ADHD is unique. So it's critical to really understand that individual person and what works for them. So for example, some people with ADHD, they're better off exercising in the morning. Some people with ADHD cannot wake up in the morning, even though exercise would be great. And then they prefer the evening. So step one is really to work out for you as a person, timing. Are you a morning person or an evening person? And it requires a lot of honesty and going, I'm sorry, I'm just an evening person, and that's how it is. Then the next steps to work out is, what type of exercise do you like? Is it aerobic exercise? Is it strength training? Is it mindfulness? Whatever it is. And if all three are needed, then the next question to ask is, what do you need to make that activity enjoyable? So one of the characteristics of ADHD is excessive talking, but not everybody with ADHD engages in excessive talking. So for some people, they need to be talking all the time. They need lots of people, doing different things and lots of stimulation for them to even be motivated to exercise. Whereas for another person, it's like, leave me alone. Why are you talking to me? No, I don't want a lot of people around me looking at me as I'm exercising. So it's really about individualizing the program, but also the environment. What time, what sort of stimulation do you like around you? Do you want people talking to you, or do I just do the exercise and then, you just give me some feedback from time to time? Or do I need constant reinforcement? Well done, keep going, and so on. And the other thing is variety. So for some, again, people with ADHD love variety, they need variety, but it's again working out how often do you need to keep changing the program. So for some people, it's got to be constant. It's like, I've done this once, why do I need to do it again? The same way. Whereas for other people, they'll keep going with the exercise for a little while before it needs changing.
Yeah. No, that's really good to know, because what I have noticed working with individuals with ADHD, they do need that positive reinforcement,
Yes.
that consistent engagement. With Ethan, he's a chatty Cathy,
Yes.
loves to talk.
Yes.
Even Navina, like, I know
Mhm.
she's quite a quiet person, but she loves to have a chat as well.
Yes.
So I have found, depending on the individual, it
Yes.
is very individual dependent. Is
Yeah.
what actually gets them to continually engage. And that's probably what's giving them that dopamine dump as well, is in conjunction with the exercise is the other elements that helps improve the activity of the frontal cortex. And even just doing a little bit of reading over the weekend as well. The more complex the exercises can actually be better as well. So it helps to improve a little bit of that neuroplasticity, but even lactic acid, so promoting that level of fatigue, has actually, from moderate to high intensity, can actually improve also neuroplasticity as well. So I guess obviously we know the health benefits in general from exercise, but then we also can see the better management of those with ADHD when they are participating in moderate to intense physical activity as well. And also, like you said, the complexity of you mentioned the complexity of the exercise, but also, do they want something different all the time as well?
And with that complexity of the exercise, the other part of ADHD and why emotional regulation is so hard is because often people with ADHD are very sensitive to what they perceive as rejection. So what I mean by that is, if I've done an exercise and you then give me constructive feedback, that can be sadly perceived as criticism, rejection. You think I'm a failure, and then that can have a real impact on the mood. So when we're working out the complexity, absolutely agree, there needs to be a challenge level, but it's really important that we think about, if it's going to be too challenging and then just can't do it, that's really going to affect sadly on the person's motivation. So people with ADHD absolutely need lots of positive reinforcement, but also it's important that they don't, push themselves so far that they're thinking, oh, I'm a failure. And then what also happens sadly with ADHD, it's very black and white thinking. I've failed this, that's it, never can do this again, and I'm never coming back to the gym again, and it's also hard. So when we're trying to stretch people, absolutely we need to push them, but not beyond that, not beyond a level where they're thinking, oh, I'm a failure and this is too hard.
Yeah, it just needs to be scaled up to like 1 or 2 degrees in terms of complexity.
Perfect.
Yeah, because I've seen that as well. So it might be. Oh, actually, I got a question in regards to that. Then, what if you've got someone who's is it harder for their motivation levels to really pick up? So say if they might be down, they might have been at school or something like that, say something negative happens, is it harder for them to really pick themselves up as well, versus when they come in a relatively good mood? Like, I'm not too sure what I'm really trying to ask, but what I have noticed is when kids come in after school, they're really down in the dumps. Do they carry in whatever happens during the day? Does that tend to manifest throughout the day as well? As well?
No, brilliant question. Thank you. So about 30% of individuals with ADHD have anxiety. So what happens with anxiety is what you're remembering, it's quite skewed, it's quite negative. So let's say 10 positive things have happened in a day, but only one negative thing happened. And it doesn't matter whether it's little or big. But sadly, what happens with the brain is, with anxiety, you hyper focus and then you magnify that one negative thing and you go, the whole day was a waste of time. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody's my friend. Nobody likes me. I'm the dumbest in the class. So sadly, what happens is, because you've hyper focused, perseverated, magnified it in your head, you just can't let it go. So as part of emotional regulation, part of it is, if I've done something wrong, at some point I've got to let it go and move on and go, now is a different moment. So so when they come into the gym, like you're saying, you're still ruminating, perseverating, repeating it over and over again in your head. And then you are, because you're feeling like such a loser, it's almost like saying, it doesn't matter what I do, it's going to be bad. And
so
go ahead.
Then, what would be the strategies then? What would be the way that you can get someone out of that slump?
Yeah. The other thing that happens, and I'll say this, and it's a key point, is that sometimes in ADHD, and it sounds very strange, but it's almost like if I've done something wrong, instead of thinking, well, how would I try and change this? You get into this downward spiral and you actually make the situation worse. So instead of thinking I'm at the gym and now I can pick myself up and now I can, try and work through it and have a better time, instead you self-sabotaging and you're actually making it worse. So that's what's happening inside the brain. So what can we be doing at the gym? At the gym, so when you walk in, because that's not an automatic thought that I'm going to try and change it, this is where you're dependent on people around you. So, like you, Trent, and all your other amazing team members, to actually be talking to the person. And depending on the person, some of us want to just say everything, some of us don't want to talk about it, but just your positive encouragement of just any effort I'm putting in, any improvement you can see, that can help the person snap out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, because we've seen instances like that as well, where
Mm.
they may have come in, they feel a bit down on themselves. Would something like even just playing like a simple game or something like that with them, just literally just trying to get their attention, obviously their attention's in here, but even just doing something like a game where they have to be in the moment and present, is that something like another strategy that could work as well?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just realized I didn't answer your question correctly. So the question really is, what are some anxiety reduction strategies? So if I'm so caught up in my head and in this loop, what can you do to bring me down? So in any random order, I'll just share 6 strategies. One is drinking water. I know this sounds like the most basic thing, but what happens is for a lot of us, when we're anxious, we're so caught up in our head, the last thing we think about is water, and often we are dehydrated. So having a drink of water, music. So in your gym, it's amazing. You've got just such wonderful music playing. That helps to reduce anxiety. The other thing that helps reduce anxiety is laughter. So if there is, if someone can make a joke or you talk about just silly things that just make you laugh or think differently, that can lower your anxiety. Another thing that helps is the physical exercise, which is what you're doing, relaxation exercises. But this is the point that you just raised. The last one is called doing a minimal challenge task. So what a minimal challenge task is, doing something that is repetitive, something that's got a pattern to it, and something that requires very little thinking. So if I'm naturally good at basketball, and that's why it's great you've got that basketball hoop at the front of your gym, because that's a minimal challenge task. It requires very little coordination. Even if you've never played basketball, you get the idea. You've got to throw the ball in that hoop. Whether you make it or not doesn't matter. But that's a great minimal challenge task. Or starting off with exercises that are very easy. You can close your eyes and do them. You're that good at them. That helps to lower the anxiety, and then you can add more demanding activities. I hope that made sense.
No, it does. It's perfect. It's funny because if we do have kids that are in that, I guess, downward spiral, we'll say, hey, let's go shoot hoops for 5 minutes. Then we say, I don't know, maybe I didn't even know about grabbing grab a drink of water. Like it just kind of like breaks that circuit of thinking.
Yes. Yeah.
In that case, then you can be like, all right, then we go with something different. But yeah,
Yes.
definitely good strategies. Appreciate that.
And success builds on success. So if there was a program, the beginning of the program needs to be with all easy tasks. So things that you're already really good at, and then make it more complex.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good. Then in terms of the differences with aerobic, strength training, and mindfulness, is there really, like, as you mentioned before, one may gravitate towards another? Is in terms of the research side, is there one that's more beneficial than the other, or should it just be a combination of aerobic, strength training, mindfulness, flexibility, mobility? Is there?
Oh, look, in an ideal world, we would do this much percentage of this much percentage of this. But some of us, let's take mindfulness, especially when you have ADHD, some people find it just really painful, because the moment you stop and the moment you have to concentrate on something. Well, here starts the mental chatter in your head, and then you're distracted, and then you're distracting other people, and then other people might be getting frustrated at you. So it's really finding out, what are you interested in? But the other part of it is, you don't have to like it. So you don't have to like strength training. You don't have to absolutely love mindfulness, but you have to do it. So it's also learning that there are just some things I have to do. Absolutely love this exercise, perfect, but I still have to do a little bit of this because the research says I've just got to do it.
Yeah, cool. And that's kind of what we do with your kids as well. We'll actually ask them, so hey, what exercises do you like?
Yes.
Okay, you like doing this, this, and this. Okay, it's something that you really hate doing. It's like, all right, let's give you something a little bit different. Perfect. In that case, then.
Because in ADHD, what also happens is there is a lack of insight and lack of awareness. So what I mean by that is, you could do the strength training and it is so good for you and it makes a world of difference, but they may not be that insight and that awareness. And then it's like, I hate this. So the motivation isn't there. So sometimes always offering a choice, it's a great idea, but there has to be, sometimes we all have to do things we don't like, but they're good for us. Yeah.
In saying that, then, is it worthwhile just to keep track of their results? Because obviously every 6 weeks we do fitness testing with them, and obviously just tracking them on a frequent basis or in a frequent interval, it actually gets them to understand, I am actually getting better.
That's right. And also giving that visual feedback, because I'll give a classroom example. So in the classroom for children with ADHD, especially who've got that hyperactivity, they find it very hard to sit still. So they're constantly fidgeting, constantly moving around. And then, one of the strategies might be, well, how about you have a movement break? But if you just went up to the child and said, do you want to have a movement break? The answer sometimes is no. And that's because I don't want to look different. Nobody else is having a movement break. Why should I have a movement break? And then, what are my friends going to think of me? So instead of thinking, I need a movement break, my performance is a lot better after that movement break, you're not thinking in that way. So this is where, tracking it, but also sometimes it's not a choice. We've just got to have that movement break is critical.
Interesting. That's really cool. Then I guess, talking about your kids in a bit more detail, I guess, how has the training with us been for them? Because we've seen them for Ethan for 2 years now, since he was 10. Navina, probably a little bit less, maybe 18 months, I reckon. What have you seen from when they first started to where they are now?
I think so repetition is really important, and that consistent repetition is key, because what happens in ADHD is just because you've done something that learning is affected. So what that means is, just because you've done something once, it's not enough. So because, at your gym, you're providing, the individuals may come twice a week, 3 times a week, or however often they come, that repetition really affects the performance. And in terms of the impact of the exercise, it's not just that you're improving physically, but mentally as well. And, that self-belief that you can do it, that self-esteem, that look at how much I've improved, and also making the connection between my effort is what produces the results. Because often in ADHD, the individual may not make the connection that it's their effort that's creating the results. You just think, I just got lucky, or it was just a good day, when that's not really the case. So it's really helped them with their self-esteem. It's really helped them with their learning. Just also, what you're teaching is the foundation for other sports. So Ethan loves to play basketball, and because of the training he's done at your gym, he's now better at basketball.
And that obviously has a flow-on effect, or a domino effect into other areas of his life as well, outside of the facility.
Absolutely, especially social skills, because with boys especially, one of the main ways you make friends is through team sport or being good at sports. So that's why really it's so important that they have those, the physical fitness skills, because that then opens up a way to make friends. And also, if no one's playing with you during recess or lunch, then you can shoot some hoops and you're good at it, and then you can attract other people to you.
Interesting. That's good. Then I guess what are some common barriers? So what are the potential challenges in implementing a routine with teenage kids and getting them actually started in this process?
So with ADHD, the one key component is medication. So it's, it is a touchy subject, and not all parents, believe in medication, not just parents, educators, practitioners, all of us. We can be a bit cynical about medication, but right at the beginning, how I said that ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and that word neuro, what that was saying is it's differences in the brain chemistry and the brain functioning. So if we narrow it down to brain chemistry, there are differences in how the chemicals are working. And to address that, absolutely exercise will help, but it's not enough. That chemical imbalance, it requires medication. So that's something, if you're finding that you've tried lots of the non-medical approaches, but your child is still struggling with emotional regulation, still struggling with routine, so waking up on time and then getting ready and all that sort of stuff and learning and so on, we need the medication. Okay, so I'll leave that topic aside. But sorry, the question was about challenges related to routines, was it? Sorry.
Yeah, implementing an exercise routine.
Yes.
So we know it's important. We know
Yes.
it's beneficial, like short and long term. But how do we actually go about starting their journey?
So so medication will help with this process because it will help with the organizing, planning, and so on. But if that is not enough, or that is not in place, then what we also need is, how I said executive functioning, and I said the front part of your brain is the CEO. So if your own brain isn't able to help you organize, plan, sequence, then they're dependent on your brain, which is you as the parent, you as the educator, to be doing the planning, organizing, sequencing for them. So this is where having a visual routine showing exactly, what you need to do before you can get to the gym will be helpful. Also, having things like timers, having watches, having alarms can also help. And that routine is what's going to help with turning it into a bit of a habit.
Yeah. Then well, this is my next question. So then we go from getting them into it, then starting. How do we make it more of a long-term success? Because obviously your kids are 12 and 14 years old. We want to make sure that exercise is a part of their lifestyle moving forward. How do we get them to transition and keep them there, so then when they're adults, they can actually maintain that themselves?
So how I said, okay, so if the child's having difficulties with planning, organizing, sequencing, the routine and so on, well, I'm going to be their external brain. So I'm going to remind Ethan and Navina, come on, you've got to go to the gym. Have you put it into the mobile phone and so on? What's happening over here is I'm being their external brain, and I'm doing all the prompting, and I'm doing all the reminding. And prompting on its own, it doesn't teach you skills. So what that means is I need to slowly start handing over the responsibility to them so that they can start becoming more independent and thinking, okay, I've got to go to the gym twice. What do I need to do? Have I been turning up? And then turning up themselves. So to transition from being dependent on other people to get them to the gym, you actually have to explicitly and systematically teach them how to become independent.
Yeah.
And also starting to build that insight and that awareness of what difference does the exercise make to your life. So really for them to start seeing this is helpful for me, so I've got to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things we really teach the coaches to tell the kids now is like, all right, this exercise is if we do push-ups or bench press, it's going to help you with your shooting ability. Upper body strength means you can shoot from further, which means you're going to be more accurate. And then because then they understand the consequences of their choice, which is in this case is what they want. Is in Ethan's case, I want to get better at shooting.
Yes.
So then the motivation is going to be higher in order to continue specifically.
Perfect. So it's building that self-awareness of, what do I get out of doing this? How is it making me feel? So building that insight and that awareness. Perfect.
Yeah. And then I guess how is early intervention getting them earlier into a structured setting, like whether it's with inner athlete or some sort of like indoor play recreation center? How does that actually help them throughout their development through adolescence?
So what's happening now? We live in a world of technology, and when you think about the different types of play, there's your digital play, playing video games and all that. Then there is your social play where you might hang out with a friend and friends, and you chat, and then you do social sort of play, let's say at the park. And then you have your unstructured play where it's not with technology. I'm going to sit at home and I'm going to draw, or I'm going to build Lego. But what's happening is, as with technology now, technology is starting to replace a lot of the physical play, the social play. It's all becoming around technology. And while technology is amazing and it's the best thing that's happened to us, there is a downside. And so even though children with ADHD absolutely need physical exercise and they're finding it hard to sit still, the problem then is, if you're not creating the opportunities for physical play, they're not going to go looking for it. So starting early is so necessary, because it's all about that balance between technology, but also that physical play. So, whether it's inner athlete, whatever sort of setting it is, it's really important that if the child isn't someone who will just initiate it by themselves, like, how some children will, even if it's raining and it's freezing, they'll go outside and they've got to play. But other children, no, they're not going to just do that. So as caregivers, we need to create that opportunity. And as long as we can, we consistently keep creating those opportunities.
Yeah. So early intervention is better,
Yeah.
but just making sure that you're creating those opportunities more often than not.
Yes.
But then trying to facilitate it as much as you can, and obviously, I guess, minimizing the contact with digital play as well, because obviously the addictive nature to it, because it gives you that dopamine hit very quickly.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Because like, even at school, sure, we've got recess and lunch, but not all kids are running around during recess and lunch. So if you use the approach, well, you've just had recess, you've had lunch, you've had your movement break. A lot of kids haven't, because they've been just sitting down. So you've actually got to create a reason why you need to move. So that's why at school, if there was that little basketball club, or it could be anything, soccer club, or AFL club, whatever you like, you have to provide the opportunity for children to then initiate movement.
Yeah, it's probably like more with secondary schools now. Like they're actually got open gym access, so they'll have like a teacher to supervise, or they'll bring in a third party to run something like that. It creates the opportunity, and then it's irrespective of weather, climate, or anything like that as well. So
perfect.
Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to. I think, we've pretty much gone through everything I really wanted to. That's really good. I guess, what are the key takeaways for parents? I guess when it comes to with their youngster, they've got ADHD, and then how do we actually help them transition and to becoming less dependent, to becoming more independent over time?
It's really all about being quite, so as a parent, you've got to be quite honest and really reflect on how much are you doing for your child. So what I mean by that is, so let's say to get Ethan to the gym, if I'm the one planning his day, constantly reminding him, Ethan, 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, what is it that I'm doing? And then what I have to do is then also, once I figure out how much support I'm actually providing, then I need to start fading it out. And the way you fade it out is, okay, so if I'm not going to be going 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, then have I set a timer? And then, the timer rings. So it tells him, okay, I better get ready. And then I further fade it down to, Ethan, you've got to get to the gym at 6 o'clock. Have you set your timer? And then hopefully moving down to, I don't even need to remind him, he does it himself.
Yeah. And I think by the sounds of it, I'm just thinking to myself, because obviously working with the kids, you know, we show them their programs, takes them a little while, maybe 3 or 4 weeks to really understand the whole concept and the exercises and the names of them, how to execute it well.
Yes.
But then even like just, I guess, self-managing themselves in the space, because we've got other people training at the same time as well. We have equipment, you know, being moved around in different positions, and, you know, we make sure that they're responsible for putting the equipment away each time. And then I think the one thing that I have noticed working with, you know, with Ethan and Navina, they actually are pretty independent. They might require a little bit of cueing. It's like, hey, Ethan, can you just chuck your pad away after you're done? It's like, oh, yep, cool. Chucks it away. And eventually over time, you know, it's less and less reminders, and he becomes a lot more independent in that sense. And we see that with a lot of kids now that have been with us for, you know, 3, 6, 12 months, that they are becoming a lot more independent. And then we're actually hearing it from the parents, like they're not perfect by any means, but they're better than when they were. And I have noticed this, it just takes them more time in order to develop skills than kids that don't have ADHD. So it's just more of a, I guess, you got accepting it for what it is, and knowing that it's going to take, you know, a decent chunk of time, and then respecting, you know, when they hit certain milestones along the way.
And also what could be useful, and not that you want to make your environment visually overstimulating and really cluttered with too much information. If it's possible, if there was key steps that need to be followed, if there were visual reminders, because something that happens that I often see sadly with, you know, as children get older, they're like, I don't need that schedule. I don't need that reminder, you know, and especially at home, it's like, you know, it's like, I don't want those reminders, but the reality is you need those reminders. So if we can normalize it by having only a few reminders at your place, then, even at the gym, you've got these reminders. So me having them at home or at school is not as embarrassing.
Yeah, well, it's like any workplace, they've got reminders everywhere.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But often as you become a teenager, it's like you just don't want anything that makes you look different. So there's almost like, no, I don't want that time, or no, I don't want that schedule. So that's where it's great that at your gym, where it's, you know, the kids look up to you and all your other team members, if they can be seen using it, then it's, that's what I need to be successful, is to make sure I follow this, or I write it down.
Cool. Then I guess, where can people find you? You know, if they want to get in contact with you, if they've got a child with ADHD or suffers from anxiety, how can the listeners get in contact with you?
So I've got a website called behaviorhelp.com. So there's just behaviourhelp.com, and it's got all the information on there. So there's books, there's online courses, and then also provide consultancy services. So just like today, you know, we would sit and chat about a child, and then we would come up with ideas, we trial them out and see how we go.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah, thanks for your time, Dolly. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. And yeah, I'm just glad that a lot of parents can be able to listen to this and, you know, actually take something away from this as well, because it's probably, for some parents, it can be a bit of a lonely expedition going through this, but knowing that, you know, there are resources out there or individuals in the local community as well, because we are based in Cheltenham, knowing that, you know, they're not going to be alone in this process. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'll speak to you soon anyways.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you to you and your amazing team for the incredible work you do. So thank you.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.